questions, that's totally fine. But don't interrupt the event, or I will server mute you. Just a second.
Jesus Christ.
Yo, loving Christopher, you're hot micing like crazy, bro.
Oh, Christmas.
Oh yeah, my bad. Sorry, I'll mute my mic there.
It's fine, it's fine.
Okay, there we go. And then obviously for those who don't have access to the district itself, you're welcome to tune into my stream. Right now for Retro Week, the War Museum is free, so it's not requiring a license. That was something I had to correct in my shout. Alright, first place I usually like to start. It's over yonder here. So the War Museum is full of actual Vectovian history that has been kind of glossed over with lore. And a lot of that is lore written, from my understanding, from the Emperor with stuff like this. And for those of you who don't know, in 2009 when groups became a thing, before 2009 they weren't in actual Roblox function at all. But in 2009 boomed the big clans that we see today. Well, some of them are still around. But one of them that started in 2009 was called the Vectovian Coalition, which is where we get these uniforms. These are some of the earliest uniforms that you can find that are Vectovian, and it was before the Vectovian Empire. In fact, on a quick note, the Emperor and I used one of these uniforms to find the earliest date that we could for the Empire, which was October 11th, 2009, and that is why Vactus declared October 11th to be Vectovia's official birthday, and that's a lot of why we're doing a big celebration for the week and have stuff going on, such as this tour. And then obviously, as you can see, this is some of our first high-tech weaponry here, which hysterically was Can Collide. So if you ran into the wall, you slammed that rifle into it too. It was horrible. Yeah, I know. It was cutting edge for its time, because hysterically enough, before we even used this rifle, gear played a whole lot of a role in clans back then. And hysterically enough, we even had a old general who we'll actually look at in here who had a list of recommended gear that Vectovians could take to go and fight. And in fact, some of it was required for certain bases we raided back then. Completely different era. And then up here, as you can see, this was the original symbol of the Empire. And we actually have a medal, I believe, with this now, recognizing people who served in the Coalition. Yeah, we do. Appreciate that. And then later, what happened in, I think it was mid-2010, there was a general in the Coalition who actually admin abused the group before audit logs were a thing. So there was no telling who was what rank or what was what, besides some of the officers and so on. And this made the Emperor pretty mad, understandably. And everybody kind of came to the decision that they were going to actually scrap the Coalition at that point. And one of the old Coalition commanders named Kylo Man created a group and presented it to Vactus as a gift, and the group was named the Vectovian Empire. So he was the original creator of the group and passed it over to Vactus in 2010, and that's kind of what birthed the Empire here, which we have a little... We cover some stuff with lore. I won't cover a whole lot of the lore, excuse me, in this War Museum tour. You guys are welcome to explore that on your own if that's something you're interested in. But it's what birthed the actual Empire. Yeah, Rusty. I think part of the lore is describing some of the Vectovian tribes that Vactus united, which, though is in this museum, that is one of the oldest lore concepts that the Emperor has actually had, long before Vyyrahk's existence. So a lot of it actually came into fruition as a result of the city, and including Vyyrahk itself. Vyyrahk is a concept the Emperor come up with in like 2011. So it is long predated its actual release. But I won't spend too long in here because most of it's lore related. I'm trying to think which one. Let me peek at this room. I'm not going in. I'm trying to remember which one's in it. Ah, that's the other lore stuff. You guys are welcome to visit that probably at a later time. But for now, we'll jump in here. But before I do, actually, I need to stop by. This is Supreme General Sage Alcatraz. He's the founder of one of the oldest Vactovian great families, known as the Alcatraz family, and there's a monument dedicated to him in Atli. I don't recall. I think Domeboy started it, but I think he taught Forpapa, another old general, how to create these. Yeah, they're really cool. They're very well made. And they show a lot of old guys like this. Some old glory they deserve. Sage Alcatraz is now a Duke of Vactovia, which is, for those of you who are not in the Vactovian military, it's an honor that you can get bestowed on you by the Emperor upon retiring, is typically how it's done. It's a medal known as the Golden Triad, and it welcomes you into the Emperor's royal family and gives you the title Duke of Vactovia, of which Supreme General Sage Alcatraz is one of them. Now, if you notice, he's wearing a uniform that is very similar to mine, but as you can tell is different, and that's because that is the old Royal Guard armor, and he is the first commander of the Vactovian Royal Guard, which I actually spoke to the Emperor about a little bit before hosting this tonight. Just to get into some history of the Royal Guard. He is the first commander. Usually what they did is they took that armor plate and they just attached it to the armor or uniform that you currently wore. And they still held the same values of being very strict and very adept in combat. That's been one of the oldest values that they have. Obviously today it's one of the most prestigious divisions that you can be knighted into. And I say knighted because you have to be knighted by the Emperor to become a Royal Guard, or a Palace Guard now, even though Palace Guard's kind of new. We'll talk a bit about them though. So we'll move on from Sage. If anyone has questions, you can stop and ask me about it. I'll come back to Stroudy here, I promise. But I think it's important to start here. These are the original founding fathers of the Empire. And starting from the very far left is a very old officer known as Colonel Radek. And then obviously we have Emperor Vactus here with one of the first iterations of his uniform, back when he had a black one a little before his cape. And at the time we were modeled off of Killzone, and Emperor Vactus's uniform modeled the Autarch Visaris. In fact, it used to be that Vactus's title was the Autarch / the Emperor, so people kind of referred to him as both back in that day. And then right in the way back there with the red visor helmet, that's General Devilish Pyro. He's also the creator of Outpost Pyro, later to be renamed the Swampy Moon Outpost. And that was one of, I don't know how many of you know about it today, but it was one of Vactovia's most famous outposts that we basically ever had. I consider myself to have been born in that outpost, and how many? I fought like 9 wars for the Empire there, and almost all of them were at the Swampy Moon Outpost. And then to the right of him is the very first Vactovian Supreme General, which some of you are already acquainted with, and that's Little Tumario, also known as Supreme General Metrak.
My man!
Yeah, that's our boy Metrak, and it's hysterical his return with the Metrak Incorporation, because it really embodies a very old soul and caliber of Vactovian that we don't see too much today. That's very, very high-spirited. It's not that Vactovians today don't, but it's just, I don't know how to explain it. I guess you'd have had to have seen him. And then to the right here is at the time General, but later to be Supreme General Doligan D. Madrick, the founder of the Madrick family, which we'll actually talk about him here later with his induction to Supreme General. Madrick was probably, for the longest time, until probably very recent history, was the most famous Vactovian ever. He had such notoriety that there were people that followed him like the Emperor. He was on a similar level that Vactus was, and no other Vactovian has ever come close to that since. In fact, him running the Madric family back in the day, old Vactovian great families played a pretty significant role back then, and the Madric family was largely to be considered as close as you could get to Vactovian royalty. It literally was almost considered the Vactovian royal family to be a part of the Madric family. And you'll see Dulligan pop in every now and again today. He's also a Duke of Vactovia. We've named several things after him, like I'm sure you guys have seen the Madric Academy. As of very recently, General Mallern has ascended as the leader of the family since Supreme General Dulligan's retirement. And it's a great family lineage. It's been around a long time. A lot of good things to say about Dulligan. And then I'm sure some of you guys have seen our boy Barry around. He pops his head in.
I guard that guy for a living.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He really is. He was an officer when I first joined VAC in 2012. I think he largely went inactive 2013 and forward. But he, as his plaque may imply, is the original founder of the Obsidian Order, and he's one of very few colonels to have been given a custom uniform from the Emperor, which was based off of the Royal Spy Master from, what's that game? Dishonored. He based it off of that, and now it's Barry's. But if you guys get a chance, say hey to Barry. He's really a good guy. He enjoys talking. Really old commander. Last I saw him is when we were fighting in TGI, which is a war that we will cover later in this museum, and I'll probably bring Barry up because he had a pretty hilarious role to play in that, to say the least. And then we come over to Senior Colonel Stroudy. To my knowledge, he is the only colonel that has been given the title Duke of Vactovia, and it's because without this guy, there would be no empire. Contrary to the name Stroud Arms, Colonel Stroudy is not the founder of Stroud Arms. It was named in honor of Stroudy. The original Vactovian Development Division that we had was comprised only of Vactovians. We outsourced nothing back then, and it was an era we could get away with it, but it was called the Evolution Initiative, and that's what Stroudy founded. And he built some of our first pieces of technology that we used beyond the Coalition, and we'll look at some examples of his work. He was an excellent scripter. There's a couple of them. There are 3 big scripters that the Empire would not have existed without, and he was the first great scripter that we had. And obviously, as you can tell by his portrait, his affiliation with the Obsidian Order. But yeah, nothing but good to say about Stroudy. He's a good guy. And we've seen General Devilish Pyro in the Founding Fathers earlier. I talked a bit about his role in creating the Swampy Moon Outpost, but a little known fact about him that I'll dive into while we're looking at him personally is that Devilish Pyro was largely considered to be Vactovia's wisest Vactovian, to say the least. He, I think he was born 100 years too late, or he's Aristotle reincarnated. He is, if you've ever spoken to him, the way he just communicates, he's just always been that way from the time he's served with us from like 2011 and forward. And obviously, as you can tell by his packages, at the time, this was actually legal for Vactovian military to wear until it had to have been later 2012, early 2013, when it was regulated that we could no longer use packages. But he's also wearing a Mark I dress uniform that generals wore. I served in that uniform, the Mark II variant that came out later. I wear it occasionally, but that's Devilish Pyro. If you get a chance to see him, he's another Duke of Vactovia, founding father of the Empire. Wouldn't be here without him. Now this kind of goes into a transitionary period that is relatively abrupt. This portrait is actually historical from 2013 when it first came out. My understanding, this is Emperor Vactus's artwork, which, little known fact, Vactus is a very talented artist. It used to be that Vactus solely created all of our uniforms. We never outsourced it at all. But in 2000, I remember it was July 17th, 2013, war was declared on us by the Grand Imperium, which we know today I think is the Federation of Arcadia or something like that. Something of Arcadia, but it used to be the Grand Imperium. And we transitioned into the Reaper era, where we had Reaper uniforms, which I can even change into one. This piece here, the Vax Gao unit, which we've seen during the last military parade I was coordinating, this is a lore piece to kind of cover the Reaper era, I think, to make the lore consistent. But an actual example of a Reaper uniform, let me put one on because I actually served in all of these. This was one of my couple private uniforms right here, and this is what the Reapers look like. So as you can see, kind of around the belt, it was similar, but it's another piece of artwork that the Emperor made him. This Reaper era continued until 2015, and I'll get a little bit into how it ended as well. This was a lesser Vax unit, as we know or knew, for the Reaper era, and then the later officer variants. Put on my old officer uniform. This was our old officer uniform for it. And as you progressed in rank, the armor just got more damaged, which the armor on mine is very battle damaged, so it signified a higher rank, because Vectovia, I think, was a little ahead of its time. It was one of the few clans that for the longest time actually had rank insignias, but it's not unlike Vac to be ahead of the game. I'm just kind of showing for the stream a little bit of this uniform. Yeah, that was the old Reaper era. Probably put on my old dress uniform, I guess. Alright. And then obviously we got the old ATAC. I don't think we've actually changed this much. We've seen it at the rec center a couple times, but we really haven't changed the ATAC very much. This was something we actually had in the SMO. We had it in the old recruitment center. We have it in the new recruitment center. This thing has always just been a hysterical way for Vectovians to say, I don't want to deal with raiders right now. If you ever get the chance, if you guys join and become a Vectovian, you get the opportunity to pilot one of those. It's a lot of fun to get in. And then obviously, looking through here, you can see some of the old screenshots that were created back in the day. These are all historically accurate, and they have not aged well in terms of resolution. One of the oldest ways to get into the Empire when it was created in 2010 was, there were two ways. There was the Vactovian Army Corps, which we know today, and then there were the Vactovian Cadets. And that's who these guys in the back are with the gray arms. Mostly the stream can probably see that, but if you guys see where I'm facing. The guy with the gray arms in the back, those are Vactovian Cadets. The black uniforms are Vactovians. Very early screenshots of the SMO there. But it was considered harder to get into the Empire through the Cadets. And it was considered... No, it was considered easier to get in through the Cadets, but it took longer. And then VAC was considered to be harder, but it was quicker. Later, obviously, the standardization of the training elements with that were later consolidated to just the Vactovian Army Corps. And then we got some early wars in here we'll kind of talk about. Actually looking at the player list. I was trying to see if I was a part of this raid because I was TGI 2013. But yeah, if you guys get the opportunity, you can peek at those. Probably won't spend too long on them.
Is the Varsia one up there, Vite? Is that there? Or is it like old?
One? Let me see. Varsia,
it's old, dude. That's
Varsia,
like, these are old.
Yeah, these are... If I were to date these screenshots, I would date these between 2010 to mid-2012.
Yeah, no way Varsia would be there then. Like the CSP stuff. No way. All the uniforms
voiced by
too
Pyrium?
old. Yeah, what's up?
It is. Good to hear from you, man.
Hello.
Yeah, Varsia, the plains of Varsia is a little newer than you might think, because we actually didn't use that until it was summer 2014 when I made my debut as a field commander. We fought a clan called the Nightfall clan there, which is where General Astral Strike first. That was his first clan before he became a Vectovian. I wonder if they're still around. I haven't looked. I doubt it, but they were a cool clan. They were a sword clan. Are they? That's cool. I'm glad they're still hopefully around in some capacity. Very, very old group.
What's the difference between the cadets and the VAC?
In the VAC,
Yes.
the biggest difference was that the cadets were... it was considered easier to get into Vectovia that way, but it took longer. And then there was the Vectovian Army Corps, where people considered it harder, but you got in quicker. But it changed in 2012. They consolidated it to VAC, and VACs took on the title cadet from that point forward. In fact, in the Reaper era, we didn't actually have the Vectovian Army Corps. It shut down. The same day I became a private, a lot happened. So it was July 17th, 2013. I became a private. I was the very last graduate of the Vectovian Army Corps until it was reintroduced years later. War got declared on us, and we got new Reaper uniforms. And then it was crazy. Even we'll actually walk outside here and have a look at one of the biggest changes as well during that era. I think it's this rifle here. It's representative of it. But we were told, hey, we're getting these new guns, and they're called RCL guns, and nobody had ever heard of that before. So that also happened on that day. It was a big day for us. The rest of these are just Vyyrahk weapons. This one is mostly modeled off of our old 2013 STA-53. And then, yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, which? When they debuted with it is kind of when the rest of the clan world started adopting it. They were very historical for that. And then here's, these are weapons from Colonel Stroudy. These are historical. Again, a bunch of bangers for models over here. But he scripted these himself, and most of them you were able to acquire from the Swampy Moon Outpost armory. And for those of you who don't know what the Swampy Moon Outpost, we actually have a portrait of it right behind us here. It was this little outpost right here. But the armory used to actually be an armory, so this is also a piece for any Vectovian military listening, is that you can actually get things in there. I mean, you can get rocket launchers in there, you could get grenades, med packs, a jet pack. There were all kinds of things you could get in there, and there were these old, let's see, I think we have one right here. This old alien air breather. You could get the red eyes one specifically, so you could come out there looking cool as hell and have some obnoxiously overpowered equipment that you definitely didn't need. And then this, yeah, go ahead. No, you're good. So you touch on something that's actually very interesting about the SMO. So the SMO being introduced in 2010, we didn't retire that outpost until actually my high command retired it in 2017 when we created Port Maersk. But besides the point, yeah, Port Maersk, hail. The Swampy Moon outpost had, between that time period, gone through so many iterations, it's not even funny. You could put any version of SMO in front of me, and I could date that SMO's version to the year and the month that version was specifically there. It had gone through so many different changes. Most people famously know it from the final changes that my high command originally created to it. So that's things like the Snowy Moon outpost that we use today. That was actually something that my wife and I worked on together, and most people know today. And then we had things like the Scary Moon outpost, and we also named it the Spooky Moon, and we did all kinds of different things with that and had little events with it. I could give a whole museum tour in itself just on the SMO. It's probably the most famous Vectovian outpost that we've ever had next to Marisk now. But it was good we got Marisk because that old warhorse needed to be retired. And then behind us here, serving the era. That was my first private uniform before the Reaper era came along. Right before the Reaper era. And they were made in MS Paint by the Emperor. We stuck with those until the second Helghast era came along, and we'll look at examples of those uniforms later. But kind of in this vicinity of this era with those uniforms around the corner here, there were much more than these uniforms, but they're very representative of a very specific era of the Empire that I would date between 2010, 2012. This is Senator Zethel's era. If you guys ever see him, that's when he first came around. And this is when generals at the time had an obnoxious amount of unregulated power. So, I mean, you could literally, as a general, the next day be like, you know what? I'm making a division. And then you just put it in the shout, be like, hey, this is a new Vectovian division. So you get things like Sage's Hounds, the Vectovian Military Police, the Vectovian Commando Regiment, the Grey Knights. Unfortunately, we don't have all of the examples of those uniforms up here, but these are largely representative of that era. The VMP, I probably personally hated them most because these obnoxious little dorks, you'd have some corporal come up to some general and be like, you can't do that, and they just try to arrest you and put your ass in the SMO jail. Dude, fuck them for that. I didn't like them, but Zethel's very proud of them, so... But, the Grey Knights were too, largely for less so than VMP issues, but more so for social circle kind of related issues. But Grey Knights were very controversial, yeah, for that reason. And that's when it came around that there was a standardization that all divisions basically had to be approved through the Emperor. And the rest of the High Command kind of rallied behind that, and it locked it up quite a bit, and a lot of them ended up shutting down. As a result of that. So the VMP's not around, Sage's Hounds aren't around, VCR is gone. And then we kind of move into, these were the weapons that I first used coming into my time as a VAC, and it was around August 2012. The models started looking a lot nicer because we were basing them off of actual kill zone weaponry, and to our current military guys, and some of these weapons are going to look pretty familiar to you. Yeah, and funny enough, on that sword, the model in Roblox is blue. We just retextured that to be red, and for the longest time, that became just an iconic symbol of Vectovian weaponry, was that sword. Until it was replaced with the one that we have today. But, these weapons were obnoxious for one particular reason. Yeah, they looked cooler, and they were based off of the actual Killzone weapons, but especially this STA-53 over here, it was horrible and awesome all at the same time, because the top barrel was your assault rifle, and the bottom barrel was this obnoxiously overpowered shotgun that had 2 shotgun shells in it, and it was basically like everybody was an ST. Like, you could just instantly just blast somebody, and they would just totally die from it. It was so overpowered, and it was like a sniper shotgun. It was obnoxious. But then the rifle, when they took the shotgun away at the SMO, the rifle itself was terrible, because when you shot, it had a recoil effect to it that would basically send your screen instantaneously to the ceiling. And that's how I took my first graduation test, was with that stupid rifle. The rest of the weapons are okay. We've always had officer pistols, ST-18s, stuff like that. But then that's when we moved to the RCL weapons that are largely represented over there, that are a much more, how do you put it, scientifically consistent way of combat is what the RCL weapons are. And then I don't recall them being open source, but during the TGI war, I do recall the Reaper 8s. The one thing I remembered about them was how different they were from everyone else's. Because if you've used them, you know that your cursor will just expand. But Reaper 8s sucked. I hated those things. They broke. No, it was Reaper 7s. The Reaper 7s. Dude, those things sucked. They broke all the time. It wasn't until Reaper 8s, and I think they use 9s now or something, but Reaper 8s and 9s, those things are awesome because they don't break. But the Reaper 7s, every other life he'd pull that thing out and like lose term because one assault who really needed to have a weapon didn't have a working weapon, and it was annoying. But for those of you who were recently around, these were the uniforms that we actually just retired. So any current military in here who calls me an old retired guy sometime, I just want you to know your uniform's in a museum too now. You're getting up there. But yeah, these guys were cool. I might touch on earlier eras with this because most of us are kind of living, for the most part, in this current era right now, despite these uniforms being just recently retired. But we did switch to a more Roman theme than a Helghast theme, and that's part of some history I'll jump into right across the way here.
Do you miss the Helghast era?
Come again?
Do you miss the Helghast era? Like, which one do you prefer, the Roman or
Oh,
Helghast?
dearly. Dearly I miss the Helghast era. They're the only uniforms I wear anymore. These were the last uniforms in service when I retired. I think they stuck around until 2018. But there were some big things that happened. In 2000, it was... Let's start kind of fall 2014. There were some controversial decisions made by the current administration, specifically the current Supreme General. And I'm not going to name that Supreme General because I don't want to start crap with them, but I'm going to talk about the history of it. Made some controversial decisions at the time that led to some a pretty tense time for the Empire. And then leading into early 2015, there was a point that the current Supreme General, after controversial decisions, was neglecting the Empire so much that Supreme General Doligan actually came out of retirement to yell at the Supreme General. And it got to a point the Supreme General actually just randomly, without a word to anyone, just left the Empire. He just straight up left. And it kind of sent the Empire into a pretty bad panic. And it led to a string of months that were probably the worst several months of my entire officer career. I was a colonel at the time when this happened. But there were low ranks threatening to leave. There were officers who were leaving, and we didn't have a Supreme General. And something I didn't talk too much about, some of you do or don't know, the Emperor was actually very sick during this time period. He has had a condition called chronic fatigue syndrome, and this makes it to where, at the time, it made him very tired, is what that condition will do to you. So like, imagine at the gym you're lifting a weight, right? And your arm gets tired from lifting this weight. But imagine when you stop lifting that weight, no matter how much you rest, you never recover from it. You just constantly have that fatigue. And it also came to a point where the Emperor was just, he had very little energy to do anything. If he did pop on, he only spoke to his generals, and he only did the most essential things. And it was largely up to the High Command, who were basically the acting emperors of the time, mostly at the Supreme General for that, being the acting emperor. Vactus was gone during one of these positions, or during these, bouts where he was too ill to come to the computer, so he was gone, and we wouldn't see the Emperor for months at a time. There could be 3 or 4 months and you wouldn't hear a word from him, and when you did, it was just to the generals. And it was during one of those times where the Supreme General left, the Emperor's not logging on, so he has no clue this is going on, and the officers are scrambling to figure something out here. And it came to a point where the Supreme General, well, the old Supreme General, Doligan, basically stepped in and was like, hey, I'm the acting Supreme General. Nobody can tell me no. And nobody did. And it was awesome that he did it, because we knew that this guy who had experience with it was going to come in and kind of quell the crowds for a little bit. And then it was him, me, and another colonel who put our heads together to try to find a way to distract everybody from what was going on. And the plan we came up with was a retro week, which is kind of what we're doing right now. And in this retro week, we decided, we're like, hey, what if we bring back some of the old Helghast facilities, like the old recruitment center? Let's let everybody wear old uniforms. In fact, I'll put one of those old uniforms on now just to show. Instead of the Reaper uniforms, and we can all just forget about what's going on for a little while. And so we wore guys like this. This was the original field uniform for generals, the Mark I variant. I served in the Mark II variant, but yeah, it was a dark time, and they were days I don't miss. I just remember a lot of sleepless nights with Doligan and another colonel named I'm Awesome Fu. Us three we worked very hard to keep things going. But we pulled through it. The retro week was a huge hit, and it happened to be that was the week that Vactus logged in and was like, yo, what the hell's going on? Where the hell is my Supreme General? You know, he's like, what is going on? But then he saw this retro week. Doligan fills him in on everything. And Vactus is like, oh, what if we go back to the Helghast era? And everybody, the whole officer corps was like, let's do it. That sounds awesome. So Vactus is like, okay, let's do that. He disappears for like a week. Nobody hears from him. In this week, Doligan, he was very kind. He promoted me to Major General at the time for the efforts that he or myself and another colonel went through. And obviously Major General is not a rank anymore. It basically just meant you were a general in training. But Vactus comes back after like a week, and he's like, hey, these are our new uniforms, and he comes out with these bad boys right here. There isn't all of them, but this was what we consider the Helghast Mark II uniforms, and that's what my era was. That's what I commonly wear, the Mark II uniforms. So obviously we got the VAC uniform here. The only thing that changed is on his chest. That number would go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. No, I think we went to 4. I can't recall, but we had more than 3 levels. There's also a big number on his back. And then this is a standard uniform, and on their arms are the rank insignias. The circle with the triad was private. And then these are representative of some divisions. While I was a Major General, I got put in charge of the recon unit, which is what this uniform is right here. And they worked very differently with some of the pauldrons that some of our military guys have seen from just the past era here. Those pauldrons meant something very different, and they came out during this era, where the green pauldrons represented you were a part of the Guardian division, or Guardian unit, and then the red ones represented you were part of the Vanguard unit. And the requirements again of those are you just had to be a private first class, and then the commander had to accept you, and then you were trained to specialize in raiding or specialize in defending, depending which one you use. And then there was no limit on them, and then there were 3 special units beyond the Guardian and the Vanguard unit. And the 3 special units were the Recon unit, there's this one, the Commando unit, and then there was the Medic unit. And the requirements to get into those were you had to be a corporal, and there was a limit of only 20 people could be in at a certain time, and that was something that the Emperor mandated, so we couldn't... you can't really tell the Emperor no. I don't know how else to say it. That's not something you do.
But I want to point out something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you remember the rumors that generals were getting access to Vactus's account?
That, Britt, is probably the oldest Vactovian conspiracy that has been around damn near a decade, probably at this point,
really
like 2012. It was when those started actually coming about when Vactus's condition was the worst, and people are like, "Where is Vactus?" And then people started just cooking up these crazy conspiracy theories.
Yeah, they thought Vactus died or something like that.
Yeah, they thought he died. There's even a kooky one that people were saying I was Vactus's son, and he was like this 40-year-old guy. It was fun to read on CNG. That's all I'm gonna say. But
oh god, yeah. There's an archive of clans and guilds. The Roblox
I should go
forums
try
actually.
to dig that one up then, because that would be hysterical to find.
I can link you to the archive of the forums if you'd like.
You should send me that. You should send me that.
Link
I
me.
would appreciate it.
I'll link
Hey.
But around the
everybody.
corner, we'll also take a look. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, that's a great question. I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because that's actually very historical as well. In 2013, when the Reaper era came around, funny enough, Vactovia's primary mode of communication outside was Steam. Everybody had a Steam account. Entire officer meetings were held just in a Steam group chat. It was hysterical. And there were people who didn't even play Steam games. They just downloaded Steam just to have the communication with everybody. And then it wasn't until halfway through the TGI war, which that war took place from July 17th, 2013, and it didn't end until April 6th, 2014. It lasted a long time. And it was about midway through that war when a colonel named Domeboy was like, hey, let's standardize some communication here for these raid callouts, because up to that point, Vactovians only communicated in team chat. And I'm telling you, you had to type like a fucking madman if you wanted to get your commands and orders through. In fact, for our current Vactovians, that is why it is in the laws that only officers can use caps lock. And it was for the express purpose of, back in that era, that was the only way you could see an officer effectively communicating orders, was through caps. And then everything else was extra. Midway through the Arcadian War in 2013 is when Colonel Domeboy was like, let's standardize this communication a little bit better, and created the first Vactovian TeamSpeak. Because Discord didn't exist yet. Discord didn't come around until, I think, 2015. And even then, when Discord first came around, it wasn't very popular. No one really used it. It was not until actually a little after my era, when I retired in 2017, when Discord first started getting used. It was the Vactovian military network that we created, and I joined it, and I was there for probably a week before I retired. And then it's become what it is today. Obviously, TeamSpeak was it was a hell of a time to be an operative. But it was very insecure, because it was so easy. If certain admins didn't like you, it was so easy to yoink your IP address. And it was awesome for counter espionage. I need to shut up a little bit. But long story short, it wasn't the most secure, so you had to really trust what server you're going to. And obviously Discord's much more secure. Me as an admin right now, I can't just go to Nihad right here and just zap his IP address and figure out what neighborhood he lives in. Which is a good thing. It's a good thing we've moved away from that. But yeah, coming back to the tour here. It's a little bit of a tangent. They're great questions. What's up?
Oh no.
CNG, you mean?
Oh no. Oh no.
So you're just kind of resurfacing a tumor that has never been removed from my head.
Oh no.
CNG was horrible. That was probably the worst time to be a general, was during CNG. I mean, it started out innocent, and then it just turned into something horrible. It was one of the worst things ever, because the only bright side was that whatever Vactovia did, it was like Vactovia's personal news crew. Anything we did, people were posting about it. The smallest things, like there could be some captains that got promoted, and people that have never stepped foot in Vac ever would be blowing up on CNG and be like, this guy just got promoted, oh my god. And it was weird. So in that aspect, it was okay. But one of the worst things I've ever had to deal with as a general is I've had the displeasure of outing too many pedophiles than I care to count.
Oh
And
yeah, there were so many of them back
it was
then.
horrible back then. They were fucking everywhere. And then there were points where a young lady would make a mistake, and send certain photos to the wrong person, and then
They
this
leak
wrong
'em,
person would just
yes.
throw it all over CNG. It was a nightmare. I will never
People
miss
were
it. It was
doing that, and they
horrible.
were all minors, which could get them in serious trouble.
There's an instance where the Vactovian High Command actually spoke with an FBI agent, but
Oh.
I'd rather forget those times.
I was
I
told back
do
then.
not miss CNG. In
Oh,
brighter news, let's look at someone much better here, Colonel Radek, a coalition veteran. He ended up retiring a little after I joined in like 2012, but like Killzone, he was the only one given the title Radek from the Emperor, as well as he was again one of the few colonels that was ever given a custom uniform, specifically of Colonel Radek's. But this guy, though it says he's a colonel, this guy was basically a general back then. Like, he was in the general network. Generals spoke to him like an equal. He was only a colonel for the lore consistency of the sake that he was Radek. He was basically a general. But obviously, as you can see on his plaque, his username is Caesar101. He appears every so often. He's a great guy. Let's think here. Speaking of my era, this is Supreme General Carnarus Vector, the head of the Carnarus family, another Vectovian great family. And he is, to this day, still the longest-serving Supreme General the Empire has ever had. Yep, there is, between the district of Empyrean and Valia, there is a entire arch dedicated in his honor. He was my Supreme General. In fact, during 2015, while I was a Major General, I was a General in training. I think I noted that there was no Supreme General at the time because he left. And through most of 2015, Vactus didn't promote another one for a long time. And at the time, General Bector was actually my mentor, because the generals were segmented to the different major generals and were told to mentor us to become generals. And Bector was my mentor. And when I was promoted on Christmas Eve going into 2016 to General is when he was promoted to Supreme General. And there are some people who have, in modern Vactovia, you may see here and there, people who have had critiques of my high command. And a lot of it's warranted. We weren't perfect. No high command realistically is. But it was a high command that had to happen. And I think there's a lot of context that's missing from some people's critiques of my high command. And part of that context is the previous high command there was no communication with generals, hardly, unless you were friends. They were largely at each other's throats, and all the generals were literally political enemies. And that was a high command that Bisho had served in, because when I joined VAC later that Christmas, he was promoted to general, and he had been a general through that entire endeavor until I joined the high command with him. And through Bector's authoritarian regime, he basically looked at these issues and was like, yeah, that shit's not going to fly anymore. And he collectively took all of the generals at the time, to include myself, and was like, if you are going to be in this high command, you are going to work together, you are going to communicate, and we are not going to do or commit the previous mistakes of our past high command. And that's realistically what every Vactovian high command does, is they come in and correct the mistakes of past high commands and make Vactovia better. In fact, to see the Empire doing so well today tells me that our high command passed the torch onto the right people. And that's what every high command's goal is to leave Vactovia better than they found it and pass the torch to people to make it better than they left it. And that's what we did. We made our own mistakes along the way, but I don't regret it. It was a great high command. It was a great era. It was a great time. Bector was a great Supreme General. But move on from that. We'll rotate around. This one gets looked at quite a bit, and it's interesting. This is Prince Maxtus, who is rarely seen. This is the Emperor's brother. And what's interesting about it is he's actually been around for a very, very long time. He used to have an alternate account in the Empire longer than I had even been a VAC, and everybody kind of knew it was Vactus's brother. And I'd even spoken to him a couple of times. He's a great guy. Not a couple. I spoke to him once. Correction. He, like Vactus, is a very level-headed guy. Unless you make Vactus mad. Vactus is genuinely a scary person to make mad. But anyway, Prince Mactus, he's a great guy. The last time he made a public appearance was during Vyyrahk's grand opening with the Emperor. I don't know if anybody has seen that on Twitch or not. I think there's a recording of it out there, but Prince Maxis came around, and he is also a developer who assisted in creating Vyyrahk City as well. So he is credited with that, and there'd be no Vyyrahk without him. He's a great guy. And obviously he adorns a purple sash of the Vectovian royal family. He's the only two royal family members that don't have the title Duke are him and Vactus. His title is Prince, and obviously Vactus is Emperor. So, yeah, if you get the chance, say hey to him. He's a cool guy. Don't piss him off, though. His guards don't like that. I'm trying to think, who should we... Because I think the next spot is going to be talking about people downstairs. I might not have the time to go through the section upstairs. Let's go downstairs. Shit, excuse me. We're getting steps in. Yeah, lazy Vectovian doesn't deserve to be one, am I right? Where are my military guys at? I'd high five someone if you were him. Let's start it this way and work our way the other way. There's this idiot over here. I heard he was a real piece of shit. Anyway, I'm not gonna. If you guys want to read that, it's whatever. I'm not gonna talk about myself a whole lot. This is General Cyborn. Oh shoot, there is one person I gotta talk about upstairs. Two of them that I glossed over. We'll go back upstairs later. But no, I can't. I can't talk about Cyberman without it. I'm sorry. We gotta go up. We gotta go up. So one of my earliest mentors is General Pro Evil. He's specifically known as General Mortez Myani. As I'm the head of the family, or the Myani family, this is the original founder of the family. My plaque says I am. I'm not. It would be this guy, General Myani the First. I am technically General Myani the Second. He was given the official title from the Emperor, the General of Defense, which, matching the Swampy Moon outpost, he was given a custom green Reaper uniform. Yeah. But he was a very historical general. He was one of the very first great high commands I would say the Empire had, though one of the earliest. And then in 2014, when I became an officer, he passed the Myani family on to me, and I've safeguarded its honor ever since. And then pushing over here, this was something I had to talk about as well after we talked about Supreme General Sage. This is astrochemistry. For those of you who are into clanning or know much about reputations of people's combat prowess, this was the late download of my era in terms of combat. Astro didn't lose. That was not in his dictionary. He was, in my opinion, the first great Royal Guard commander. He took the Royal Guard in 2013 during the TGI War, and he is the reason the Royal Guard has the reputation it does today. I cannot speak highly enough about this guy. He was one of my closest friends when I was a general. I miss him dearly, and there easily would be no Empire without this guy. He's retired. He still pops his head in a little bit, but like me, he's been retired a long time. But
He does stuff with TNI.
he used to. He retired from TNI recently as well. He was a senator with us for a little while as well, but Vectovians in general do. they we look edgy in general. But man, what else can I say about Astro? He was interestingly enough, he was some of the greatest Royal Guards I had ever witnessed under his command were people like Supreme General XB. Supreme General XB, funny enough, that guy used to be a guard for me when he was a Royal Guard. I'm so glad he's made it as far as he has. But if anyone has any respect for XB, they should for the Royal Guard as well. Because Astro cultivated a culture of just true Vactovians through the Royal Guard. It spawned people like Astral Strike was a part of that Royal Guard with Astrochemistry's command. There was XB, there was Sesuk. People know Sesuk today, which little known fact, Sesuk's a prior Royal Guard. There's JT. He's in the Royal Guard right now. This is his second time in the Royal Guard. And they were just some of the most elite people ever. Him and that entire unit, they didn't lose. Like, if you wanted a server to be won in an area because you needed the best of the absolute best, you sent Astrochemistry and the Royal Guards. And they got results, period. They were awesome. Let's sprint on there. Now, I mentioned Pro Evil up there first before I talk about Cyborn. Because Cyborn, as his name implies, he is a Myani. I'm General Myani the second. This is General Myani the third. And he is a Duke of Actovia. And after, he was a captain when I retired, but after I had taken off, Cyborn had made his way up to General, and he helped really reorganize a lot of Actovian systems that I believe we see today with him and I believe Duke Alpharon. They really... Yeah, and the Alpharon and Cyborn both were, when I took off, they were high-performing scouts of my recon unit. They really took the torch and ran with it far. It was great. And they both really refined a lot of current Vactovian systems. So that is Cyborn's historical piece there. I kind of touch on Cyborn's even though he's over there. Now this general is the one I talked about earlier. We knew him as Deadly. And he was the one I was telling you about where he had a list of gear that you could buy to raid. He is a coalition general. I think he came over to the main empire there for a little while. But one of the earliest generals ever, which is interesting. He's down here with a lot of new guys. Excuse me, still recovering from the plague. And then behind us here we have Supreme General Ganix Alcatraz. He's the second Alcatraz family member to reach Supreme General. Alcatraz family's famous for that, I'd say.
Motherfucker's like Darth Maul.
Yeah, that was his custom uniform. At the time, it was much easier to get custom uniforms from the Emperor because he was the only one who made our uniforms for the Reaper uniforms. And he had a very great choice. I think he still wears that.
Does.
Yeah, he was our Supreme General when Doligan retired Christmas of 2013 going into 2014 is when he ascended to the position of Supreme General. I almost said the throne. They don't have a throne. But anyway. We also know him as Ed. Most people, you'll hear him say Ed. Supreme General Ed. There's Alpharon over here. So I talked to you about him. Him and Cyborn are big proponents of current modern-day Vactovian systems. And he used to be a Myani. A little turd left the Myani family. I backhanded him a couple times for that already, but still talk to him today. I think he leads the Omegon family today, which is an officially recognized... Yeah, those guys are officially recognized family for the Empire as well. Over just a faction. Well, we see him as a faction here in Vyyrahk, but Vactovian families extend beyond just Vyyrahk, so it's an officially recognized Vactovian family. And like Alpharon, you see a bunch of systems being put into it. That's what that guy does. And then behind us here, this was a general I served with. That's not his historical hat combo. It's interesting they gave that to him, but I think it was a later one he had. But his name is Teton. He's also known as General Jarkev Syndicate, who, let's see here. So the Syndicate family is led by, or was led and founded by General Astrochemistry we saw earlier. If you see a Syndicate, that's a name to be very well respected. I think Astro passed head of the family on to Supreme General XB recently. But Jarkev, similarly, was a great general. He was known as one of the most... Him and I think they have Hunter next to him as well. Him and Hunter both were considered some of the best defenders that we had. In fact, he was the commander of the Guardian unit that I spoke about earlier. And very rightfully so. He was a part of, before he was promoted to general with me, he was a Royal Guardsman in under Astro's command. And absolutely elite guy in every way. Haven't seen much of him recently. I miss him. Hope he pops his head in sometime. But if you see him, definitely say hey to him. There'd be no Empire without Jarkev. Similarly with Hunter. Hunter's an old soul. He, kind of like Devilish Pyro, was known for being one of the wisest Vectovians ever. He was a bit of a valorous type in the sense that he never used his microphone, but despite that was still one of the most elite Vectovians ever. He was, before being promoted to general, he was also a Royal Guard. In fact, man, the guy has been elite forever. He was one of the few guys that, like, in the Empire, everybody just knew from the time Hunter was a corporal. They're like, this guy's going to be a general. Like, they just knew. He just had that level of gravitas with him. And he did. He made his way all the way up there a little before me.
How long did it take?
Let's see here. So when I joined VAC, he was a private first class. So that would have been 2012. And then he made it to general later in 2014, just after the TGI war had ended. So it was probably late spring 2014. But he's one who retired, and I don't think he wants to be found. Nobody's really heard from him. Nobody knows where he went. Yeah, I saw that. I don't think it's deleted. I think he moderated it somehow, but I don't think he deleted his own account. I think Hunter just doesn't really want to be found. But in the event he does, he's always welcome to say hello to everybody. I miss him. Another elite. And then these guys, these two, I'll rope in together. As you can tell by their packages, they're generals of the same high command, same era. These are some of the earliest commanders we've had. On the left is General Squid Boy, and then on the right, I believe that's Despartan. Let me double check that. Yeah, I had a feeling that's Despartan. So, I remember the Empire was pretty big back then. There were a lot of generals. 2016. No, this is far predates 2016. Let me tell you, this is like 2011. Christmas 2011 is when these guys were promoted, and I think they began their VAC careers sometime in 1864. It was the summer. No, I'm just kidding. But, these guys were all roped in together. There were quite a few of them promoted. So there was Bisho, my Supreme General, that was promoted with these guys. There was Astro that got promoted with these guys. Pro Evil, Squid, Spartan, Korvac was promoted with them. Quite a few of them were that same Christmas Eve. But they weren't the most active. I didn't know them too much because when I joined, it was kind of the last bit of their... I guess officership or activity. They mostly faded out at that point when I had joined, so I don't know much personally about them other than I know they were a part of a very historical high command that the Empire needed, but like all of them, we all had our mistakes. This is Colonel Arcane Clone. Nothing but respect for her. She was the first great VAC overseer. She was my VAC overseer. And similar to a lot of Vectobians we viewed down here, she was elite in every way. Administratively, she was elite. One of the most well-organized, one of the first like well-organized officers that we had. Again, I'd say she was the first great VAC overseer. She taught, she both pioneered and taught some of the most meta combat that existed during the time for early RCL. And she made elite Vectovians. If you graduated Arcane Clones VAC like I did, she made great Vectovians. Unfortunately, part of the history with her is during the TGI war. It was, excuse me, Jesus.
Take your time.
I still got the plague. But, where was I at here? TGI. She, well, for some context here. We were part of a Vectovia that was, or clan world, that I consider to be the Wild West of the clan world. And as part of that, there were not the most honorable strategies used back then. So the TGI war was an endurance war, which meant that both sides were just going to fight until one side surrendered. And that's why it went from July 17th to April 6th. It was one of the longest wars the Empire had ever fought. And there were some pretty scummy tactics. And one of them were a bunch of the Arcadians got together and they mass reported one of her t-shirts that wasn't against Roblox terms of service in any way. It was like a necklace or something stupid. And it actually got her account terminated. And after her account was terminated, we never heard another word from her. And nobody knows where she went. Like a lot of conspiracy theories, every female that basically joined the Empire thereafter was like accused of being Arcane Clone and hiding. But obviously none of that's true. But last I heard is she was moving to Texas from somewhere in the East Coast. And she seemed to have been doing well. And then that was the last we ever heard from her, Callie K. Carneris. She was part of the Carneris family. Which is interesting, they don't include that on her plaque. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Correction, they do. But, yeah, a lot of respect for her. Then behind us here we have Senior Colonel Opicor. Now, I had mentioned earlier that there are 3 revolutionary scripters that the Empire would not have existed without. Opicor was one of them. After Stroudy had retired, Opicor had taken the lead, and he was somebody that I managed as a general, and he was one of the best scripters ever. He's from the Netherlands, and he was so selfless with his service. Nobody ever paid the guy a dime, which just wasn't a custom back then to pay developers. Obviously, as things went forward, it became more and more apparent we had to do that. But he was a part of the Zastic family. Another Vectovian great family run by a general we'll actually see down the line, so I'll save the Zastic family a little bit. But Opicor himself is a scripter. Like, you could ask him to do any project, and he would just do it. And he had some of the most revolutionary designs, with the caveat of one terrible one that I and a lot of sword fighters hate. He created some of the original anti-force tie swords that the clan world later, a lot of them, I wouldn't say all of them, later took and ran with it. It was one thing we didn't like about him, but at the same time, he did so much work for us that it was like, I think that small thing heavily outweighs all of the victories he made. He's the reason our officer pistols were able to shoot through like force fields in God mode, which at the time was revolutionary, because if there was an exploiter trying to cause some trouble, while you're waiting for an admin, the officers could just fucking blast them. It was great. And yeah, what else did he make? He refined some of our RCL weapons. In fact, I think I recently talked to some of the military guys about this in the VCN with the STA-54 that I had posted in there. He scripted those STA-54s, and they were, amongst all of the other clans, some of the most seamless rifles. And the way he also later scripted our STA-55s that we saw in the second Helgast era upstairs with the uniforms. And he created this very interesting like design, because Vactovia has always been very protective of our technology. Because back then, if it got stolen, it got stolen. Roblox themselves were not going to back you up if your assets were stolen. It's different today. They'll help you out with that. But back then, it's like if it got stolen, that it sucks to be you. And part of one of the things we countered with that was Opicor came up with this scripting system that even if people stole our technology, it had such a wacky anti-theft like script to it that the only person who knew how to make the guns actually work, and they worked well, was Opicor. So if people try to steal it, and it happened a couple times where exploiters would yoink the SMO or something, and they couldn't figure out how to get the guns to work. It was great. He was brilliant for that. There absolutely would be no Empire today without him. He also helped me. I was a prior head of recruitment, and with the recruitment center that we have today that I hope most of you have seen, at least most of you, that was a project that I was the overseer from, and he helped me script the original pieces to the recruitment center. It was awesome. It might give you just a second. Get yourself some, what is this? Virgil's root beer, 0 sugar.
No, drink
Highly-
water.
highly
stay
recommend.
hydrated. Stay
No, water's
hydrated.
great.
Hell no, you need that Sprite, bro.
Sprite's great.
Vecna.
You know, coming into this area, we're going to be coming across some new guys. I don't know anything about this guy.
Oh, I know him. That's actual ops. He was the first
Tell us
guy
about him,
to. Basically, he's the first guy in the sparring arena to achieve Titan.
Hmm,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. I can see that being a big deal back then.
Royal. He was one of the Royal Knights.
Yeah, fight.
What's up?
I can speak. I was actually a high rank in one of his clans. I can speak about him.
Yeah, go ahead.
Don't wanna. Yeah. Do it.
Okay, so I'm not gonna try to fucking suck him off and shit, but this is Actual Ops, aka Actriox, aka Actriox Madrick. He was a Royal Guard. He
Royal Knight,
was
actually.
well, yeah, he was in the Royal Guard. He's a Royal Knight. And he was renowned for being one of, if not the best, STA user ever. He went by this quote called "Don't miss, won't lose," and he was just like a fucking crazy shooter, dude. Like he would
He
not
sounds like
miss. He
It's
would
a big
not
deal
miss.
to be both a Royal Knight and a Madrick. That speaks a lot about him.
Yeah.
And kind of bouncing off what Britt said about him being a Titan from the sparring arena. I think that's kind of how he got his title. He's called Actriox the Titan. I forgot who his Royal Guard he was under. He was under One Spells briefly, and before that he was under. Who was it before One Spell? Was it Astra before One Spell?
It could have been Anakin. I think Anakin took it a little.
I think Anakin.
Yeah,
Anakin.
Anakin.
And I think he was briefly in. Actually, I think he was in Anakin. He was probably in Anakin's, but and yeah, I was actually in his. He led a sword clan before he came to Vac. He was under the name of Death Ranger 1148. He led the clan called, I don't know if you guys know this if you're an old head, but it's called the Sky Clan of Roblox. He was
Interesting.
relax. Hold on.
I actually heard of him then.
He's yeah, he was a very good sword leader. I actually respected him a lot. I looked up to him when I was a high rank under him. He was such a good person. And after he retired from SCR, he pursued gunfighting and became a legend in VAC. Honestly, I
What
couldn't believe it.
about, do you? Who's this back here? Do you know One Spell very well? He came in a
do.
little after. He was
I
a
do.
VAC briefly during my period, and I didn't know him very
I
well.
also.
I
And
know
then he
once,
came in when I was took off. What
He
do you know about him?
He was so I know him from Surge. He was a general when I was in it, but so this is Vyyrahk the Merciless, also known as One Spell. He was a colonel in VEC, I think around 2017, 2018ish, maybe even before that. Don't quote me on that. He led the Royal Guard, and I guess I know he was like very renowned in one of the wars. I forgot what it's called, but he was a really good leader. He was a very unbiased colonel. That's all I can really know about him. But he did kind of, I forgot how, but he did help the Royal Guard in some way, in some benefit. But he's one of the people who kind of started this trial thing of, you know, the RG trials sort of kind of thing. I'm pretty sure, at least. I don't know if they had RG trials.
No, that was
before.
Astro. That was definitely Astro.
Never mind then. But that's kind of all I really know about him. He was a great person. I remember, you know, I had some good interactions with him. He's a very nice person.
Yeah, I'd only met him briefly, but I didn't know a ton about his service.
Yeah,
other than he was a Royal Guard commander.
Everyone kind of seemed scared of him, but if you got to know him, he was a very nice person.
Well, Vectovians can be intimidating, man. Don't cross them.
A lot of them,
Especially
yeah,
if
definitely.
they're UK.
It's good to know about him. He seems like a great guy. I should say hey to him sometime.
Yeah, definitely.
Over here, we have
Nitro.
General Nitro Strike. I have so much to say about this guy. He's still a very close friend of mine today. He is, yeah, he'll DM me sometimes. Nitro, it is just, I don't know how to explain it. This is so him to be wearing what he is, because he, at the time, was probably easily Vectovia's most famous raider ever. If you wanted to raid and you wanted to get some, you came with Nitro. He was the original commander of the Vanguard unit that we talked about earlier. And for both his beard and his hat, he always liked to very much state that he was a Viking raider and an American with his cowboy hat. It's just the best way to explain Nitro. He's hysterical. If you get to talk to him, the guy, he used to get in trouble a little bit back then because he walks some pretty fine lines and sometimes gets himself caught into a little bit of controversy. But starting from his early career, he, like I said, was Vectovia's most famous raider. And this might sound a little different from your guys' current era for some of our current troops. But back then, if you wanted to raid for 12 hours, you could raid for 12 hours. And by that, I mean there were so many clans, so many active clans, and so many bases that you would just go raid a base as Vectovia, go win, come back to the rally point, everybody would high-five each other, and within 5 minutes you're redeploying to a completely new group, and you could do that for literally hours all day. And if you wanted to, you did it with Nitro. It was awesome. And he was also renowned for giving just these legendary speeches. Like, he would just get up in front of everybody, they would play some dramatic music, and he would just pump everyone up, get all these Vectovians riled up. He is the start of when, hang on, I'm going to test our Vectovians in here.
That's me. Can I answer to VC?
There we go. You see that right there?
Yes!
That Nitro is the reason that we do that. He is the start of that happening. And it just stayed with Vectovia ever since. And it pumped the boys up, and we would go freaking get them. During the TGI war, it was during that endurance war, we would raid for 14 hours against TGI, and how it would work is you would just raid all day. That's all you did. You would raid or defend. You'd fight all day, and then you would stop, and then you would trade out with the UK guys because they're just getting out of school or waking up, and then they take the torch and raid all day, and then the Americans get up, and you just there were like 3 or 4 day straight raids just fighting that war, and Nitro was a huge contributor to the activity. But later on, it was like Colonel Nitro was like, it was known that he was just hard stuck Colonel, the poor guy, for the longest time, and it was like his ultimate dream was to eventually hit General. And he was even a Major General with me when we were generals in training, and sadly he was the only Major General that didn't make it to General, mostly at the time not because he was necessarily underqualified. It was that he wasn't active at the time. He kind of went inactive at just the perfectly wrong time. But then it wasn't until May 23rd 2017, him, Astral Strike, and Anakin got re-promoted to General, but those 3 got promoted to General together. Astral Strike was my replacement. That was the day I retired and the day that Astral took my place. And I still remember that conversation with the Emperor. But long story short, another thing to note about the TGI war was during the beginning of it, there was, during one of Nitro's legendary speeches, and us being Reapers, he was making a reference in one of his speeches that we were going to come in like a Reaper strike, and he ended up misspelling Reaper and spelled Repper and said Repper strike, and some Arcadian spies caught wind of this, and they started making fun of him because, like I said, Nitro is very eccentric. He was also half referencing the game Mass Effect for Reaper strikes, but he was also referencing Miley Cyrus's I came in like a wrecking ball at the same time because Nitro is just hysterical. So when he respelled Reaper, the Arcadians took this and ran with it. In fact, they actually posted a monument in their main outpost making fun of Nitro, of him on a wrecking ball shouting Repper strike. And do you think that got Nitro down?
No.
The answer is hell no, it didn't. Nitro took that and ran with it. He took it with it so much that he changed his name to Nitro Strike, and he started the Strike family. So that's how the Strike family came around, and later inducted people like Astral Strike into it, and that's how the Strike family started. Because you don't get Nitro Spirit down. That's not in his vocabulary. That doesn't happen. Great guy, great friend. I'm glad he still pokes around, but I think I've spent a long time on Nitro. It was pretty funny. It was great to watch that unfold historically. It was very, very inspiring.
Just skipped Hugginator.
Did I? Where's he at?
Hugginator's right here.
Let's not skip Hugginator. He is a part of the High Command I told you about earlier. I was promoted with Squid Boy to Spartan. He's also known as Korvac. If you guys know him personally, Korvac the Frog. Old reference. But he was interesting because he ended up leaving at the time during the TGI war and actually became a general, or in their case, a lord. That was their equivalent to general back then. For TGI during the war. I don't know a whole lot about Korvac because he wasn't very active when I first joined. And the only thing I did know about him is when he left to join TGI before war was declared. And then he ended up serving on their side for the war. And he came back briefly while I was a general. Hung out in VAC. He's a funny guy. He still does some dumb stuff in the officer network. There's a place called the Hall of Lords where if you, for any reason, become a general, retired or present, you have access to the Hall of Lords. And that's where we all kind of keep in touch. And, Korvac pops in there and makes everybody laugh. He's great. But don't know a lot about him historically other than that. And then we'll move over to Colonel Domeboy. By his portrait, which by the way, he is the creator of this style of portrait. And he created most everybody's portraits in here because Domeboy helped me work on a version of Vectis's Imperial Palace that didn't come to fruition. In fact, some of his assets are in here still. Domeboy created like this chandelier up here that was going to be in the palace. There were chairs. Like if you guys own the 3 mil house here in Vyyrahk, the chairs in it were stuff he created that were originally going to be in the palace. He's the founder of Stroud Arms, and he created, without anyone asking him to, he just created the Stroud Arms factory, which is a Vectovian facility that it's seldom visited today, but he just made it and was like, hey, do you guys want this? And just gave it to Vac, and we're like, yeah, we'll take it. And he's a very talented, very smart developer. He's from the UK. He's still a close friend. And he also, as I stated earlier, this is the guy that created the TeamSpeak and established the first Vectovian voice communication systems. After that, he never reached Colonel again because he briefly retired and came back while I was an officer, and he mostly hung out in the low ranks for the most part, and he developed for Vectovia from that point forward, and he did a very excellent job at doing so. He was a great developer, a great friend, a historical Vectovian. Today he works doing stuff for Sonar Studios, which was started by a Vectovian friend of ours named Alert Coder, who's the third scripter the Empire wouldn't exist without that I've talked about. And we've all just kept in touch since then. He's a good guy. I think he visited recently, like a month or two ago. He did. Yep. Not a lot. I remember it being like $1, $3, something like that for like a month. But yep, he did that, set it all up, and yep. I miss him. I say I miss him. We still keep in touch, but we don't talk as much. This is Colonel Kylo Man. Okay, I'm glad they updated that because it used to say lieutenant. He was definitely a colonel. If you know Kylo Man, you know how much of a troll this guy is. It's just so representative of his personality. It's just so funny because it's like in voice, there's not a serious bone in this guy despite him dressed as a skeleton. But in person, he'll be dressed just like this and just be a total serious deadpan Vectovian. Like, there's just a switch that turns on and off with this guy. And he, as I was stating earlier at the very beginning of the tour here, he's the creator of the Vectovian Empire and presented it to Vectis. So he still jokes occasionally with Vectis that he is the original emperor. And I haven't spoken to him in years, but he's a great guy. I'm pretty sure he pokes around sometimes. Mostly around the military, but yep, that's Kylo Man's historical significance, which I do believe he was one of the major lieutenant generals back when that was a really early rank, like 2011, but historically mostly known as a senior colonel when that was a rank as well. Oh, I'm glad that this guy's here. So this is Colonel Vorvelm. He's wearing an old Vectovian uniform, as you can tell, from the VCR, the Vectovian Commando Regiment. It was one of the regiments that were shut down that astrochemistry originally led, and they were some elites that actually had some weight to their names. He was considered to be one of the most deadly Vectovians ever for his era, and he retired kind of right as we were getting into the TGI war, but he was a great colonel, very historical, one of the earliest badasses we had for an elite special forces, you could say, division. And I assume he pokes in because of some retired roles I see with him, but I haven't heard from him in years. He's a cool guy. Hey, thanks for stopping in, Bucky. Yeah, go ahead. We never used it. Nope, not really. Most of what we did in that area was we created a like a group chat. Excuse me. We created a group chat in Steam. That's where most of that stuff existed, if it wasn't a specific division, but otherwise we didn't utilize that function. Everybody loves Brad. The only historical inaccuracy that I see on his plaque that I've mentioned so many times, Brad was definitely a lieutenant. He was not a corporal. People knew him as a corporal, but he was definitely a lieutenant.
Well, one of my first conversations with Brad was him asking when we were going to break Law 13 together.
That sounds like Brad so much.
Yeah,
He is another guy that you cannot find a serious bone in this guy's body. But at the time, he was just such a diehard loyal Vectovian. Despite not having a serious bone, his goal in life is to make sure that everybody around him is constantly dying of laughter all the time. If your sides aren't hurting, he hasn't been around you long enough. Brad's hysterical.
I think he made the Danthian video.
He made so many. So he is the creator of a YouTube channel. It changes names frequently. Sometimes it's Twix Hit. Sometimes it's the Vectovian Broadcasting Corporation. But he made some of the earliest memes. In fact, I actually... What was it? His video, there was Vakfis and the Three Wise Generals. And then there was two others that I actually helped him as an actor in. Which is weird, I appear in it, but I've never played myself in any of his videos. I've only played other people, despite me appearing in his videos.
You literally didn't want to be yourself because people would be like, wait a second.
Yeah, it didn't matter anyway. It was fun to play other people. Like, there's a point, I was playing Doligan, I played Hunter at one point, and...
I love the ATAC video. I'm gonna post it.
Oh yeah, go ahead. His stuff is hysterical.
I'll post
If you guys get the
images and
chance, check it out.
videos. That's his channel.
Sorry, come again. My headset just cut out for a second. Oh, yeah. So he temporarily used stuff like that because when he would film certain things, he would use places that would boot you out of the place unless you were in that group so that people didn't disturb any filming that was going on. So I've hopped into that group a couple of times, but that's mostly what he used it for. Then, like, if you were just an extra like me, you either left or were just kind of kicked out afterwards so that he could keep doing his thing. But it's mostly how he just kept polishing his videos.
Yeah.
But you get a chance, check out his videos. He does great stuff. He's an old Carnarus member. Yep.
Is he in
And then we have
Discord, or is he? Because I know he's in the Lone Star Discord.
I don't know. He pops in and out of the Vactovian Discords.
Yes, he's in here. He's a retired Vactovian in this Discord.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes he is. Sometimes he isn't. It depends with Brad. He does his own thing.
I think the last conversation I had with him was about how he still hadn't watched Endgame. Hold on, check.
Oh Jesus! I keep sneezing. I had to mute.
Yeah, the last time I talked to him was like 2 years ago, and he still hadn't seen Endgame.
Yeah, that guy.
It was like March of 2020. He was like,
You know what's funny? The creation of Lone Star. If you guys know who Alert Coder is, he's an, like I said, an old
Yeah,
Vectovian
I was
scripter.
in Lone Star.
Alert Coder and Brad started Lone Star before it was called Lone Star. And their uniforms were originally orange, but it had the same basic concept, and it was actually led by Alert Coder with Brad at his side. And it was basically just a meme group that Lone Star kind of perfected, I would say. Because after Alert wasn't the most active with it, Brad was like, let's have this same concept. In fact, the uniforms were damn near identical. And then Brad took off with his own thing, made Lone Star, and it just became its own thing. And I'm glad he did it. Lone Star was hysterical.
Hello.
So we have this guy. His name's Ice. Hello, Frog.
I'm
Thanks for coming.
approximately 3 hours late.
Frog.
Frog.
That's
Don't
it.
you have rocket science?
You're being fired from the attendees.
Vit, I spun the wheel and guess what I won?
What'd you win?
What?
Oh, a pass to the museum.
That doesn't
That's
require
great to
a
hear.
pass?
That doesn't. I won the war museum pass. I
Well,
won
when you
it.
get in here, we better make sure you got that pass. Or we're
Yo,
You
is
know,
that,
you're
is that
just-
old
I'm-
machine?
Don't make me on
I'm actually
cranky.
just about to wrap up, but
No, sorry,
Actually, you know,
I'm
I have one
redeeming
more
my
thing,
pass.
actually,
You're gonna have to
you'll actually
stay-
tune in for a pretty important part.
Here, I'll post my pass proof in Vyyrahk Hub. You know, I want it.
Excellent.
Please give me my tour.
Well, some of the prominent figures. This guy's new. His name is Ice. Most people have seen him. Vyyrahk has been in development since early 2018.
No, it was before 2018.
It was
I don't count
2017.
Anakin's. I don't count Anakin's.
Anakin's counts because it was supposed to come out. in
No, okay.
2018.
I was a general in that era, and Anakin City was always a giant piece of shit. Every time he was like, "Guys, we're working on it. Come check it out." And the other generals and I'd be like, "All right, let's go have a look, Anakin. Let's see what you're doing." I'd be like, "Anakin, what is this fucking pile of garbage? Like, what the fuck am I looking at?" I don't count that.
They
Nothing
actually
like
say
this.
it was a pile of shit to Anakin's face.
Dude, we roasted the crap out of each other back then. It was just the relationship we had. We were close enough with each other to say that. But Ice is the reason that Vyyrahk came out, because when it was first being created, it was a totally different project. Mostly, the architecture has largely remained the same, but a lot of the scripts had to be completely reworked because it was broken, and there were political things going on, and then there were like some other setbacks where like developers were claiming they were better than they were. It's hard to explain.
Politics in
long
a
story
Roblox
short.
game?
Politics and the amount of work that Ice.
Excuse
It's what
my
he
voice.
says. Come on now. At least you know.
Yeah, I don't. Ice is new to me.
When I say politics, it's like the developers we had, it needed to be focused elsewhere for the Empire to stay alive.
Yeah, I was
then
mostly
the-
joking.
You guys were
That's it,
using
Frog.
you guys were using.
You're making me
download
explain myself here, Jesus.
The,
But,
like,
um,
download effect.
Apologies. I'll
But,
stop making jokes.
But anyway, Ice was a real saving grace, and that's why he has a spot here as one of the only non-Vectovians. But he's a really nice guy, very professional dude.
Is Frontlines gonna come out or no? Or is that?
I
think they're
think
looking for-
after
They made an
Vyyrahk
announcement
they started.
Okay.
about that.
Pretty
Okay,
sure they,
even
yeah,
more-
pretty sure they're
more
working
of a
on it.
hot topic that I think only like Frog and myself and you, Miani, will even know about. Is Rovers happening still?
Oh, Rovers!
That was the height. That was
Yeah,
the height of my
man.
hype.
You
of
know
Rovers.
nothing.
You know,
I mean-
Rovers started at the height of my Highcom, and I remember Vactus announcing it, and it actually had some pretty cool functions in it. Like I
I
remember
went
the
and played the
air
dogfight
combat.
simulator with a
Yeah,
bunch
those
of
were
friends in
cool.
I went and played it with a bunch
Oh
of guys
yeah,
in
I have
Spectre
a
Company,
very
and we had
important
good
question for
time.
Miani, since
But like,
it's a rather.
they
rather
had like a
interesting
raid in
story.
Rovers too. There's like a 6-7 man
Do you mind if I
like,
ask this question,
Destiny
Miani?
2 style raid in the game that you could do for like Hollow.
Yeah, go ahead and ask it. What's up, Britt?
Sorry, Britt.
So, this has popped in my head, and I wonder. There were so many rumors about you and like Joylessly being together, and then later on, like whole story of how you two actually fell in love, or do you not want to disclose that?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. It's funny because it's like that's what I consider one of the many hysterical conspiracy theories. Because Joy and I never started dating until I want to say 3 months after we had both retired. And during the
Oh.
time when those things were coming out, we thought it was hysterical because it was like, yeah, I know for a fact I'm not dating you.
Yeah, because there were rumors of astrochemistry dating her.
Definitely not. That, yeah, that sounds.
Tovians
Hey,
don't
hey.
feel love.
Hey,
We feel
Miani,
love
can
for
you go,
war.
Can you go to the Frostplan
Holy
uniform
war.
over by the entrance?
I'll
Or over by
I'll
the
come
entrance
over there.
door?
I actually I do not have time to cover all of the subjects in this particular room, but the most important one I'm covering here, which is with TGI. And it's because I have some passionate
Colin
views
Brix-
of this war.
Calling Brixter the betrayer of Vactovia? That's cold.
Well, it's because, historically speaking, when we talk about the TGI War, we largely see it as a separatist rebellion and refer to it as the Arcadian Revolts. And the historical context of this is that at the time, for today, it's kind of common to see like, oh, this guy was a Vactovian PFC corporal or something, and now he's in Seoul fighting us. It's like, that's kind of a common case these days, but back then we had never seen anything like that.
I have a question.
Yeah, clans were a
Go
lot
ahead.
more loyal back then in general.
Were you around whenever the EL versus VAC war happened?
Yes.
Do you remember the fact that EL claimed victory and VAC claimed victory?
Yes.
So therefore, why is it on the wall?
Well, that's because you see, Frog, they actually the ones who lost.
No, but why is,
well,
why
you
is
see,
Robine?
I was
Why is
EL
Robine
back
on the
today.
wall? Because
Well,
Robine won that final
I'm
battle.
sorry to
That's what I
say
wanna
you're
know.
still a little sore from these ass whoopings we gave back
okay,
then.
look,
I want to know why
Robine didn't
Robine's up there, because Robine actually won their final
Robine didn't
battle.
win that last war. I was there for like the first person.
Did they have multiple? I thought Robine
All right.
had multiple
Hey,
wars. Yeah.
Before
Robine
we
had
derail
multiple
this,
wars.
I want to bring us back on topic here because this is the last thing I'm going to say before I totally dismiss this.
Aw.
The TGI War, essentially, I think is the most important war Vactovia had ever fought. And it was probably the hardest war we ever fought until CSP. And the reason I say that is because we had never seen this before in the Empire, where all of TGI, their high command, officer corps, everything, was completely made up of old Vactovian officers, to include their Emperor Castilian, who was an old colonel. Including his second in commands, like Brixter was an old officer, Toberdam was an old officer, all of them. And we had never seen that before. So it kind of shook the Empire a little bit, where we were like, oh crap, this is for real. When they declared war on us, so we're like, this is actually going to be a real enemy. This isn't Rat, this isn't John's Cobra. We're fighting essentially Vactovians in a different uniform. And there was a pretty substantial skill gap between Vactovians and the entire rest of the clan world back then. Like, it was just every single raid, you just steamrolled everyone, because everybody who was good was basically a Vactovian until TGI came around. And it was an endurance war. Like I said, July 17th to April 6, 2014, when Arcadia, Emperor Castilian, signed the official unconditional surrender to the Vactovian Empire. And that was the terms of the war. You basically beat the shit out of each other until one gave up, and TGI did. And what was interesting about it was that, like I said, there were 14-hour raids where you would get on, you would just raid all day against people who were just as good as you, and you didn't stop raiding until the UK guys, Europeans, woke up and took the torch and kept going. And then you'd go to bed, and then when you're out of school or you wake up or whatever's going on, the Americans get up, you take the torch, and it was like there were 3-4 day raids straight until something would stop for like a half hour, and you just raided for days, and it was horrible. And you would see your buddies start leaving. You'd be fighting with your buddies one day, going through some bullshit, and then the next day they're in an Arcadian uniform, and it was demoralizing. It was horrible. And finally, when the war started to die down, Emperor Castilian surrendered. And what's very interesting about it is TGI fell apart after that. They totally fell apart, when at that time, easily, they were our equals. They were easily our equals. But they fell apart. And I think it's very important, especially for our current Vactovians, like my man Nihad over here, to understand that could have been us. TGI today is fallen apart, war-torn, like squabbling tribes that are just shells of their former glory. And that could have been us. Because they had our spirit, they had our combat prowess, they had their own culture. I mean, that could have been us. And it wasn't. So that's why I definitely believe that that was the most important war the Empire ever fought. And anybody who fought in TGI knows how much that war sucked, but how proud they are to have served in it. And anyway, I appreciate everybody for coming out and listening to me bullshit for, what is it, 2 hours or something? I don't know how long I've been out here. 2 hours, 3 hours almost. Damn. Oh, good. And I'm around for questions. Thanks for coming, Ehud.
Could I ask you a question real quick?
Absolutely, go ahead. Let me real fast. I'm gonna mark in the events that my event's over. Also, if you're interested, I'm pretty sure Frog is gonna host something in the theater, so keep an eye out for that.
No. That
We're
one.
not doing Rat
Okay, I'm gonna make a statement on that. If Rat Violence gets hosted, it's going to be like an official event that I ping everyone for. It will be scheduled weeks in advance. It would be rehearsed for days in advance. It will be a glorious play. It will not be stupid. It will be well thought out and rehearsed and very funny.
Is it that one thing that you're that has the scripts? Oh god, it's that
It's
one.
the one play that has the scripts.
The one and only.
It's the one play that has a full script.
It has a full script. And the Emperor read it and approved. So therefore, it will happen.
Oh god.
Honestly, Vactus has been a bit in his trolling arc right now, and I'm here for it.
It's great. Okay.
Dude,
anyways,
Vectus, that guy's always been a memer. I got stories.
No, I remember hearing the SoundCloud of the HighCom meeting when was it CSP? Was that what he was talking about? CSP?
Yeah,
dude, Vectus such a fucking savage.
Vactus 2016, Vactus is going.
Vactus
oh,
saying
we might have to
L,
as they say, take the L, so to speak.
Yeah, and the other's got a good
Such a troll, dude. Vectus is awesome.
I will send it to you. The other's got a good chuckle out of it, I heard.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Also, with the speakers around Vyyrahk, when it says that you're going to hear a speech from the Emperor, that is actually his voice.
Yeah, it's toned down a bit. Like,
They edit a little bit, but that's basically Vectus.
Oh man, dude, the last time I had a serious conversation.
what, they didn't auto-tune him to sound like an angel?
I want to hear auto-tune Vectus.
Angel? You think he sounds like an angel? Frog.
I mean, why would we want our Emperor to sound like an angel when he is a god?
Yo, Miani, you know what's hilarious?
Dude.
So there
What's that?
So the Vactovia Roblox account that was just Vactovia was shared between XB and Cowboy, and we caught a clip of them at like Belt Grounds, having like doing a really suspicious looking clip where it looked like they were cheating.
What?
So I had to walk Vactus through how to PC
Nah,
check
XB just that good. He's old Royal Guard, man. That guy kicks ass.
Yeah, no. I think it was XB on the account. It was just one of those where the like watching through PVI, it straight up looked like someone was aiming.
Found the SoundCloud audio.
Yeah, if y'all want to come to the theater real quick, I will be hosting an event.
I'll stroll on over there. If
Yeah.
there are any senators I want to get in the senator mobile with me, feel free.
What? You didn't tell me there was a senator
Hey, you should
mobile.
let the Vactovians in there. Hello?
Hey, Miani, look at
I'm running.
Just look at the images and videos tab in the VCN.
Someone
Scaretex
send me
fixed
that,
the doors. Oh my goodness, he fixed it. He fixed the glorious doors. Oh, boy, I'm so excited.
I think that is my most proud I've been of an interaction with Vactus.
Let me see. Where is it? Let me have a look.
It's in images and videos.
I know.
Oh my god.
I'm gonna have a look.
So, like, Vit, why were you allowed to ping at here? Am I allowed to ping at here? What is it?
No, I wasn't. I had Bomb Packs had to come in and do it for me. Because he was like, yeah, you should at here for it. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. I don't know if it'll let me. And then it didn't.
What the? Oh no.
He had my back.
So you got
Oh
trolled.
no. Oh no, it's
Yeah, I
that
got
video.
baited.
Oh no, it's
See,
that
alright,
fucking
I'm gonna
video.
spawn the senator mobile, okay? Senators of Vactovians only.
It's that.
Alright. Everybody's
It's
in the
that-
goddamn way. There we go.
It's that
Any-
fucking video of oh no.
Any senators that are not
It's true.
in the Tau group, can you
Alright,
guys join
Vectovians
it?
and senators only.
So that way you guys can have access to the stage whenever you want.
Do what needs to be done, Senator Glazar.
Ivy, get out of here, bro. Ivy, you are neither a senator nor a Vectovian.
Ivy, you're making it smell like perfume in here, alright? I don't like that.
Why do you want to make it smell like perfume?
Dialogue, why are you an aspiring SD main? Like, Mayorski's on its way out.
I don't care. I am a Port Marisqui defender.
Okay,
Come
for
on.
glow. Only for glow. Oh.
Also, sweet goodness, your
just gonna
voice
try
is
this
so gender
again.
ambiguous.
I
don't
won't
know
get
how to
it.
pronoun Dialogue.
I trust you.
I'm a male.
Hey yo, Impure attacking. Hey yo.
Oh shoot, I gotta hold E.
Foggy, don't even, dude. Don't even.
Eh? Oh, you said
Foggy,
Foggy.
not Frog.
Okay.